Hi, in the previous video, we've looked at the concept of elasticity and, in particular, the price elasticity of demand. Now, in this video, we're going to look at the formula for PED, that is how we can calculate the price elasticity of demand. Okay, so if you notice, the formula is basically just a mathematical way of representing the description of PED that we've already understood. So the first part of the description says that PED measures how much quantity demanded has changed, and you can see that that goes in the numerator directly. And of course, while measuring price elasticity of demand, we are trying to see how much the quantity demanded has changed in response to a given change in price. So you can see that that goes in the denominator. So basically, if you just remember the concept, you're easily going to be able to remember the formula as well, which is once again simply the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Okay, so just in case it's still not clear, then I would strongly encourage you to pause the video and think about what I'm saying. Hopefully, if you can see the intuition behind the formula, you will not have to memorize it. And well, even if you decide to memorize it, you never know, under exam pressure, sometimes we tend to forget formulas that we have simply memorized. So it's always a good idea to at least try your best to understand the concept behind the formula so that just in case you forget, you are able to come up with it yourself. Okay, so that was just an exam tip. And now another point that I want you to remember is that PED is always going to be negative. To understand why, you simply need to look at two possible scenarios. So here you can see in situation A, first we simply have the formula for calculating PED, which is percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in price. Now notice that in situation A, the price is falling, which is indicated by the downward facing arrow, and obviously when price falls, we know that quantity demanded is going to rise. So that is indicated by the upward facing arrow. So this means that in the numerator, we're going to have a term that is positive, and in the denominator, we're going to have a term that is negative. Just in case you're not sure why, just think about it like this. For instance, if the price falls from 100 to 90, the difference is going to be -10 and not +10, obviously, right? And let's say that in response to this particular price change, the quantity demanded rises by, let's say, 50. So maybe originally the quantity demanded was 100 and now it has increased to 150. So basically what we need to notice right now is that in the numerator we're going to have a positive term, whereas in the denominator we're going to have a negative term, which means that overall we're going to end up with a negative term. Okay, and in situation B, basically it's the exact opposite. So this time you're going to see that the prices have increased, and when the prices go up, we know that the quantity demanded is obviously going to fall. So in situation B, you need to notice that this time in the denominator, we're going to have a positive term. Once again, if you're not sure why, just think about it using some numbers. So for example, if the price was, let's say, originally at 20 rupees, and let's say that it increases to 30 rupees. So this time you can see that the difference in prices is positive, right? Because 30 is the new price, 20 is the old price, and 30 minus 20 is +10. So when prices increase, then the change in price is obviously going to be a positive number. And of course, we already know that whenever prices increase, the quantity demanded is certainly going to fall. So in this situation, let's say that originally the quantity demanded was maybe 50 and now it has decreased to 40. So this time you need to see that the original quantity demanded was obviously more than the quantity that is currently being demanded. So the quantity that is demanded now is less than the quantity that was previously demanded, which is why the change in quantity demanded is going to be a negative number. And finally, once again, what we have ended up with is a negative number over a positive number. So eventually you're going to end up with an overall negative term. So the point that you need to remember from this lesson is that Because there is an inverse relationship between quantity demanded and price, so overall the price elasticity of demand is always going to be a negative term. And if you mistakenly end up with a positive term, that should indicate to you that you've probably made some mistake in calculating the PED. And towards the end of this video, I have set an example for you to try out both of these situations for yourself. However, before you do that, I now need you to note one more very important point. So even though you're going to end up with a negative number every time you calculate PED, but as a matter of practice, you always need to ignore that sign. And now you must be thinking, if we need to ignore that sign, then why are we so concerned about making sure that we end up with a negative sign? Well, the answer is simple. The negative sign simply indicates that you've ended up with the correct answer. However, the reason I'm saying that you need to ignore that sign is simply because, as you will see in the next few videos, our focus is going to be on how large or small the term is, and therefore we're simply going to ignore the fact that it's always a negative number. Okay, now first of all, before we actually use the formula that I shared at the very beginning of this video, I want you to first just try calculating the change in price and the change in quantity in order to firmly grasp the fact once and for all that the answer is in fact always going to end up being a negative term. So here on the screen you can see that I've put question marks deliberately because I want you to try this for yourself. So you can see, for example, that in situation A, I gave the following numbers, that is P1 is equal to 100 and P2 is 90. That is, the original price was 100 and the new price was 90. And when price decreased, the quantity increased from 100 to 150. So Q1, which is the original quantity demanded, is 100, while Q2 is 150. So once again, calculate Q2 minus Q1, which is delta Q, and see whether you get a positive term or a negative one. Okay, and once you're done trying out part A for yourself, then I would encourage you to pause the video again and use the information on the screen and follow the same steps for part B again, but this time, as you remember, we said that the price is increasing instead of decreasing, because of which the quantity demanded is obviously decreasing. Okay, so presuming that you have actually tried this, you should be able to see that the answer at the end is always a negative term. And we know that this is because the law of demand says that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. So logically, it's impossible to get a positive answer. Okay, so up till now, we've just focused on the fact that the answer is overall always going to be a negative term, but we have not yet tried the formula for PED, and this is what we're going to do next. Okay, so as you can see on the screen, I have shared this worked example where you can see that I've broken down the entire calculation into 6 simple steps. But I've only done so for part A, and for part B, I want you to apply these 6 steps and try out the PED calculation for yourself. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit and see what these 6 simple steps are all about. So step 1, you simply have to write the formula. So the formula, as we remember, is the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Okay, so just take note of the fact that this is exactly the same formula that I had shared at the beginning of this video. The only difference is that over there I had written it out in words, while here, in order to save time, I have expressed the same thing using symbols. So that small triangle that you see followed by the percentage sign is simply the Greek letter delta, which means change in. So if you read it out, it's exactly the same thing which I stated at the beginning, that is percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. Okay, now in the next 2 steps, we're going to calculate the numerator, but we're going to do that in 2 different steps. So first, we just compute the change in quantity demanded, which is given by delta QD. So D is basically the subscript, so that tiny letter that you see next to Q, that is what I'm talking about right now. So Q2 here is the new quantity and Q1 here is the original quantity. So just subtract Q1 from Q2 and divide the answer by Q1. Okay, so this is going to get you 0.5, that is 1 over 2. And then in the next step, which is step 3, in order to get the percentage change in quantity demanded, you simply multiply the change in quantity demanded by 100, which is going to give you 50%. And of course, if you're good at math, then you should have been able to see that when the quantity demanded increases from 100 to 150, this is simply representing a 50% increase in quantity demanded. But it's okay if you had to calculate that. So next, we follow the same steps, that is step number 2 and 3 were for calculating the percentage change in quantity demanded, which helped us figure out the numerator part of the formula. And now we're going to figure out the denominator part of the formula, which requires us to calculate the percentage change in price. So in step 4, as you can see, you simply plug in P2 and P1 in the formula and you're going to get minus 1 over 10. And then in step 5, you just multiply this answer by 100 in order to get the percentage change in price, which is here in this case minus 10%. Once again, it is possible to see at a glance that when the price decreases from 100 to 90, this is a simple 10% decrease in price. Okay, now here comes the final step, which is plugging in these numbers, that is the answers that you obtained in step number 3 and step number 5, and you're done. Why? Because that is all that you needed in order to get PED. So when you plug in these numbers into the formula, you're going to end up with 5, which is the price elasticity of demand in this particular situation. Please note that at the very end of this page, I have reproduced the information that I have used in the above example, just in case you did not remember the numbers that I had used while explaining the same example. Okay, so like I said earlier, I'm not going to be calculating part B. Instead, you need to try this out for yourself using the 6 simple steps that I just shared with you. And of course, if there's something you're still confused about, please feel free to ask me and I will try my best to explain in the next videos.